I used to think healthy eating for a whole family had to mean complicated meals and hours in the kitchen. But Hungry Root has changed that for me completely. Shopping, planning, and cooking food really can be simple and stress-free. Imagine having your weekly cart filled for you, meals planned, and all of it tailored to your preferences. That's what Hungry Root does, and they do it well. With over 15,000 recipes, many ready in 15 minutes or less, and high-quality grocery options, I've been able to get meals on the table fast without compromising on ingredients. They screen out over 200 additives, no high fructose corn syrup, no artificial sweeteners, and they carry brands I trust like Oatly and Vital Farms. Since using Hungry Root, I've cut back on takeout. I waste less food, and I've even saved money with their best price program. Here's how to try it. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg and use code Dr. Meg. That's hungryroot.com/Dr. Meg. Code Dr. Meg to get 40% off and a free item in every box for life.
On today's episode of Parenting Great Kids,
we moms are taught early on, and I think it can even start before the child is born or before we've adopted the child. And it's explicit and sometimes implicit that putting their needs first is selfish. Where does that belief come from?
Well, Meg, there's a long story and short story of that. But, to suffice it to at least say it's wired in us of generations of mothers feeling like their most important job, why they're here on this planet at all, is to bear and raise children. So if something has been deemed, and that's been wired in for generations, that your needs don't really matter, it's carrying on and, doing the job that you were here to do, which is to care for others. So in whatever way, at whatever level it was overtly put that way to you, or, it's just how you see it happening in your atmosphere, it continues to be wired in. And this is, probably 6,000 years of it being like this, at least, right? But from a time where it really became clear, or we were dictated as women that's how it goes and that's what it is. And your needs not only don't matter, you don't matter. I mean, there were times it was really bad, right? Now we're just called selfish. And now, it's not, you're still frowned upon for not putting others before yourself, but it's not quite as dire as it used to be.
Well, the truth is, though, when a baby's born, they can't care for themselves, even when they're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So if a mother doesn't put the baby or the child's needs first and her needs first, what happens to the child?
Yeah. So that's it. I love that question, Meg, because it kind of points out that how, the wiring gets started right away. Because of course they're helpless little beings and they're looking to us for everything. So there is, even in that period of time where you are giving so much, right? And the focus is on that newborn. It doesn't mean that you can't still be taking care of yourself, right? It doesn't mean that you have to suffer at the result of that. That your needs aren't even applicable, right? It's kind of a mindset with it. Even though if you looked at the hours and the time, for sure, in those early months, years, when they're like 100% fully dependent on you, you're going to be giving a lot. But we're also trained that, that in addition to that, you don't deserve or shouldn't have your own mothering, or your own self-care in a way that actually makes you a better mother. It actually makes you do that thing you're supposed to do and that they're relying on you doing, I'm going to say better, but you're definitely have more capacity, whether that's energy, whether that's your mental or emotional capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we do get a little bit messed up is we think that that's somehow we're going to sacrifice for the child, but we're actually ended up not being as there for the child as we could be.
Right, right. And I think emotionally as well. I think that, we have 3 grown daughters, and I said, being a mom is incredible and it's very, very important, but save something for you because those kids are there just a brief time.
Mhm.
And then there's you have all this life after them, and you want to be able to have something of yourself that you feel good about, that you can do and that you give.
Yeah.
And so that our identity, our roles may shift from years to years, but to always maintain that sense of self where it's really important for me to care for myself. I saw an extreme case of this. I had a young mother come in, and she had twins, and she was breastfeeding both twins, and her mother came in for the appointment with the twins. And you know that when grandma comes in, there's a problem that the mother doesn't want to talk about. But anyway, she had Bell's palsy. She had postpartum depression. She's breastfeeding both of these babies. And I looked at her and I said, why? And she said, well, breast milk is good and I need to do this. I said, yeah, but, one of the best things that you can give your baby is a happy mother.
You're
And I
here.
literally had to talk her into, giving bottles, getting on her medication. But you're right. There's a sense that it doesn't matter what I need as long as I'm filling the needs of the baby and not even paying attention to myself. So what are the kinds of things? But it's different. So
Mhm.
if you have a mother who's working outside the home full time and she has a baby versus a mother who's able to be home full time with her baby, what are the most important things mothers need to pay attention to keep themselves healthy?
Yeah. Well, I think I love the example you just gave, Meg, around our emotional well-being and getting ourselves, tended to. I somewhat consider, making sure you're getting decent meals, that you're getting fed, figuring out sleep to a certain degree, as best you can in some of those particularly early years, and showering. I call those maintenance, right? And sometimes that's new for women to realize getting the support they need or structures set up to have, basic self-care, basic maintenance, right? And that can sometimes be a huge step, but it's even that's tied to emotional aspects, right?
Mhm.
What do I deserve? Or maybe I'm wired from my upbringing that it's not okay to ask for help. I should be able to do all of this by myself. Like that's what my mom did, or that's what I saw around me. So all of that is going to be seen as a weakness. And so I don't want to do that. So immediately we're starting to see, oh, one of the best things I can do is look at what beliefs do I have? What beliefs got wired in here about mothering in general that may be an issue, right? Which then ties to, I think, whether at home or a working mom, taking care of our emotional well-being. And that can be, that can cover everything from, taking some time for yourself, for quiet time, a little bit where you're checking in on yourself. What is my emotional state? Like even like little things to be aware that our emotions are there and they're happening and they're important and we need to tend to them.
Yeah.
To, then you can take it steps and step beyond. Like my ideal is, when a mother can see that having strong emotions or things being, chaotic and upsetting are are a natural part of mother. They're going to be there. This isn't you didn't do something wrong if you're, you know, having a whole range of feelings, but how can I learn to tend to myself in those emotions? How can I, and sometimes that doesn't end up meaning working with a coach or a therapist, to help navigate that a little bit, right? If that's at all possible, anywhere where we can get that kind of support to kind of, it's an understanding, it's an awareness raising, it's a consciousness raising aspect to it, then, you know, a whole bunch of things can start happening. We can have more compassion for ourselves. We can, if something triggers us, we'll have more of a sense of like, oh, why did that bother me so much? And we can start being curious about it, rather than try and stuff them down or feel like something's wrong with me because, oh my gosh, I had a moment of not liking my baby, or
Right.
being mad at my baby, right?
I often hear mothers say this. Well, I get upset, I get angry, I get anxious. And this is in the privacy of my office. It's not sort of out there at the grocery store, which makes me think they don't want to tell their friends. And she'll say, sometimes I get so down and I'm so depressed, but I know I shouldn't feel that way. And so wait, why should you not feel what you feel? And I think even admitting that something's off on the inside and they don't want to either state it or tell anybody, why do we do that?
I know. Well, I mentioned it, but let's go into it a little further because it's so important. Because again, of this generational wiring. And now that we're not in villages and tribes and we're so much more isolated, and we haven't watched other mothers go through this a whole lot, or what we are watching is on social media, and we're only seeing so much of the positive, or people aren't showing their meltdowns terribly often, in plain sight. So our only conclusion is, well, if it doesn't look like how it looks like on social media, or I don't have anywhere else to gauge this, I'm going to, of course, turn it on myself and think this is about me. Oh, I should be. It looks like everybody else can handle it.
Exactly. Yeah. So really women sabotage women. If women go on social media and they put their best face forward and show their lovely kids who don't have mustard all over their face, or, whatever, they feel like, well, gee whiz. I mean, look how easy it is for her. I should have it as easy as well. And but I wonder if there's a sense of when I don't do social media. It freaks me out. I have a team of people that do it, but even at my age, it really shakes my confidence because I don't look like these people. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But there's almost a sense that those who post loveliness about parenting almost want to dig at those who are going to be reading it, and I kind of sense that there's this competitiveness between mothers, and I wonder, do you think that's real? Do you see that in work that you do?
I do. Yeah, I definitely do, Meg. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's actually one of the codes that I share that I believe need to be rewritten. But we have this code that, I become a mother, I'm going to have an instant tribe of other supportive, caring, mutual women. And it's so sadly often not the case. And I think for all the reasons that we just talked about, these insecurities that we all already have, a culture that isn't really supporting us in a way that, we can make mistakes and have compassion and show our real authentic selves. It pits us against each other.
Yeah.
Right. And so in order for me to feel better about myself and maybe even choices that I've made or how it's going for me, we judge other women, we judge the other mothers, we judge, for their choices or for the way they're doing it. And it's all, I think all of that is just a reflection of how we feel insecure about ourselves, and where we're not feeling as supported. And, my vision out of that is that we could, and that we could be all on one team. Cause oh my gosh, cause when it does happen, when you do find like-minded or supportive or places where you can really be yourself and they can,
There's nothing like it. There's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing like it really. And I have a couple mini tribes, but that's good enough, where
Yeah.
we know everything we know about each other. But I also think sometimes that takes maturity and time.
Mm,
And also that's hard to do, in your 20s or your 30s as
yeah.
a young mom. Now, there's so much pressure on mothers. We have the pressure that, we put on one another. But there's also these quote unquote vague cultural expectations, if you will, where, well,
Mm,
the internet is a tough one because there's,
yeah.
you can find out anything about anything and most of it's not true, but mothers feel tremendous pressure to be the perfect mom and to exercise and to lose that last 10 pounds and to make sure they're feeding kids, healthy foods and God forbid, never McDonald's or fast food. They need to work. And it's almost like they're kind of going to explode. And you talk about being a good enough parent.
Mm,
What is a good enough parent and how do we accept being a good enough parent, not a perfect parent?
yeah. I love that. I first heard that term by through Donald Winnicott. He has some great, if you've ever read him or seen his stuff, he's from back quite a way. So, I give him a lot of credit for trying to take some of that pressure off of women because this intensive mothering or this new paradigm where we're supposed to be everything and for our children, and this perfect mother that's impossible, but
Mhm.
just 100% not possible. Um, he started putting out like, how about a good enough mother? And then what's nice about the good enough mother, Meg, is that you get to decide what that is.
Yes.
You get to decide what a good enough mother is. And, whether you know, as I propose in my book, really decide what your mother code is and, go on a little bit of a journey and process to really articulate that.
Mhm.
It's fine. You can just name a few things that you value or ways that um, that make sense to you or your intuition is telling you. And then, yes, if you want to see like, okay, my intuition is telling me to do this, I do want to make sure that won't kill my baby. I'm being
Right.
really extreme, right? But
Yeah.
for us to first look to our inside and to our intuition and to what our felt sense of it is, and then if we choose, w- talk to other people about it or share. But the important thing is claiming what some of those are for you. Then you're just measuring yourself against your
Yourself. Hmm.
yourself. And
Hmm.
and now, granted, some people can say like, well, my my vision is to be the perfect parent, right? And so you
Yeah.
know, we're talking more about values like, I value connection or, I value learning and growing, emotional expression, like things like that
Hmm.
around. It could be within a family teamwork or living to our potential. And that gives us much more space. It gives us space to make mistakes. It gives us space to learn and grow, to be curious. And it's not so, if I don't get my baby weight off in, 2 months, then I'm a bad mother. I didn't do
Oh,
it.
we could create a list of all the things that make us a bad mother, all the things that we're failing to do. And I, just sort of tossed out a few of them with the healthy eating and losing the weight. But there can be a huge, long list of ways we feel we're failing as a mother.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it helps to write down, 3 or 5 things that are really important to you as a mom and to look at those and to let the rest go. And you'd hope
That.
that something like losing that 10 pounds is not on the list. But, maybe teaching my kids courage and how am I going to do that over these years? Or teaching my kids to tell the truth, but to really just focus on the big stuff because most of that other little stuff doesn't matter. I see
Well,
so many parents all wound up about, their kid not getting into this and their kid didn't do well on the soccer team and what's going to happen to their self-esteem and da 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 da. And I sort of say, well, how are you feeling about your kid not making, the
I love
soccer
it.
team? Well, I don't know. And, when you were talking about emotional health, it makes me think of something too. Whenever I see a child, doesn't matter the age, under 18, who's having a lot of anxiety or
Mhm.
who's worrying about something or who has some depression, one of the first things we do is we look to parents and say, well, tell me what's going on in your home, because I'll guarantee you, if mom or dad are wound up and anxious, you're going to have anxious kids. And
Mhm.
so I tell moms, that's why I say one of the most important things you can give your child is a happy you.
Mhm.
Because if you're not happy, you can send your child to all the counselors you want, but if that child
Yeah.
comes home and you're just worried about everything, things are going to be kind of miserable. So anyway, that's one of the things
Love
that
that.
I think can be helpful, even just to write them down so you remind yourself, it
Yes.
doesn't matter if I didn't exercise today. It doesn't matter if, and to give yourself some grace. You talk about breaking generational patterns. And
Mm.
I think this is great because you're absolutely right. We learn from our mothers. We tend to repeat what our mothers did because we repeat what we know. It's just sort of our default. And you talk about it that things get passed down like layers of paint, which is a great image. So what is some of the common patterns that mothers pick up that they got from their mothers?
Yeah. Well, I just don't want to forget to say this, Meg, and then I will answer your question, because when you said that, like, we just end up, it gets passed down. And even going back to what you said before, like, they can get all the counseling, but they're with you almost 24/7. And, in those most formative years when everything's getting wired in the first 3 years, they're with you a lot.
Mhm.
So yes, other influences are going to impact, but yours, which, can feel kind of heavy. It's like, oh my God, what am I doing to my child? But at the same time, and then you said, teaching your children courage. Well, they're going to see that when you do courageous things, right? When
Exactly. Yeah.
you tell the truth, when you don't want to at a certain
Yeah.
when-
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
right? So I was afraid I was going to lose that, but also, we'll unconsciously do the things that we saw done and were modeled in and wired in, or we'll do the exact opposite.
Don't put it down. Put it up way, way, way.
As a parent, I'm always looking for ways to help my kids manage their big feelings and stay focused during the day. And that's why I was so excited to discover 80. It's a brand new music project created just for neurodivergent kids, especially those with ADHD. What makes 80 so special is that all the songs are voiced by an imaginative 8-year-old girl. They're playful, relatable, and turn everyday challenges into fun moments kids can actually connect with. Whether it's getting kids ready for school, calming them down before bed, or finding focus, 80 helps kids feel understood. And the debut album is out now. It's called Nothing Rhymes with Orange, and it's available on all major streaming platforms. Find the new album from 80, Nothing Rhymes with Orange, on your favorite music app, or click the link in the episode description to listen now. That's 80, AIDEE, your new musical sidekick for life's little ups and downs. Click the link in the episode
Don't put it
description
down.
or listen now
Put
on
it
your
up
favorite music app.
I know where to put my things, so I have them when I need.
Every child is different. Some love reading, others thrive with hands-on projects, and some just need a little more space to learn at their own pace. That's why I'm excited to share about K-12, a flexible, tuition-free online public school option for families. K-12 powered schools serve students from kindergarten through 12th grade with accredited interactive learning. Their curriculum adapts to your child's learning style and pace, and all their teachers are state certified and trained in virtual education. And it's not just sitting at a screen all day. K-12 blends interactive lessons, tech, hands-on learning, and even offers field trips, extracurriculars, and social activities. You really can have flexibility and community all in one place. It's about giving your child the tools they need to succeed, not just in school, but in life. And with over 3 million families already enrolled, you're in great company. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12 and empower your student to reach their full potential now. Go to k12.com/Dr. Meg today to find a tuition-free K-12 powered school near you and enroll now. That's the letter K, the number 12.com/Dr. Meg. K12.com/Dr. Meg.
I don't know if you see that. It's like, well, my mom like hovered over me and, was watching every move I make. So I'm just going to let my child run wild, right?
Mhm.
Like, well, we'll do those things, right? Because we haven't done the thing that you're saying, like write the 3 things, find out what matters to you or what value or what kind of parent, do you envision? And it's going to be informed. It's okay to say, well, you know, my mom never picked me up from things or drove me to school because she was too busy. So I'm going to, now I'm going to never not take my child
Yeah.
to a thing. But even if we look at that, like what is it that you are yearning for and that thing you didn't get? And
Right.
maybe it was connection, right? So, all right, maybe I am also not going to, that might not be the place where I feel like I want to connect with my child, but we're going to set up something else because that's what I was really missing. And I think the biggest one is the one we started with. I mean, I think if there's anyone that we see, no matter, how they're doing their parenting, the not valuing themselves, the work they're doing, the care, the time, attention that they're providing the child and letting that matter,
Mhm.
having, who they are matter, valuing them. And that then also ties to then valuing themselves enough to take care of themselves.
Mhm.
Um, and that is something they deserve. It's their, I don't know, it should be part of the job description, but it hasn't. I would say those are by far probably some of the highest, but then I think something that and they all kind of interlay and interplay in a way, but another one that fits in there is it's definitely not okay to have your emotions, right? That whether it's everything from like, oh, I'm supposed to just, I mean, even like, um, I'm definitely not supposed to show what we might consider negative emotions ever, around my child, and we'll just stuff all those down. But maybe there's a way to like have some of that in a healthy way, or show some of our frustration. So they see us work through. So they see that it's actually okay to have feelings, and make that distinction. I'm not directing, rageful anger at them. But I can be mad about something, or I can say, I'm mad that you did that. I'm not mad, you can make and clarify things and still there's so many ways that we can, but being passed down that we're not supposed to show those and only be happy, right? But that's
Right.
not possible
Oh,
either, right?
that's a tough
Right.
one. Only be happy. I know. It's interesting because a number of years ago, I went through a really bad depression, and um, it lasted for about 2 years.
Mm,
And you try to hide it, and my husband was great, but the truth of the matter is, it has a big effect on your kids, whether you want to admit it or not, and you try to
yeah.
put on a good face. And then finally, I just decided to say, okay, guys, let's sit down. This is what was. And I imagine you felt that I wasn't there for you, and I wasn't. And I'm
Mhm.
really, really sorry for that. But moving forward, because kids you know,
No.
know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you want, what you don't want. And we pretend that they don't. So I think you're right. If we just come forward and say, guys, I had a horrible day today. My
Mhm.
boss yelled at me all day and I am so mad. I just got to go for a walk. I'm sorry. Rather than, coming in, starting dinner, and trying to smile and erupt at your kids. It's not
Yes.
fair to them.
Right. Oh, I love that. And if it's okay, I'll share an example that
Oh, sure.
what you're talking about, that, learning as I go with this and trying some of these things out, and, recognizing and wanting to bring some more emotional intelligence into the family. And so similar to what you're saying, I came home from work one day, just almost probably the exact scenario that you described. My boss been yelling at me all day, or I felt
Yelled
like
at, yeah.
defeated, or, there was something. Walked into my daughter's room. She was in maybe second, third grade, something like that. And I found something to be mad at her about. I don't even remember what it was, right? Like, oh, you left your clothes on the floor, or whatever it is. And like, or she said something, and I had this like, nasty response to her. And she looked at me and she said, "Mom, do you need a session?"
Do you need a session? Did she offer to give you one?
She did. She did. So it points to the, like, they know, right? They know. And we had other encounters where we'd had do-overs, right? Like, amongst each other, right? We had batakas. We were trying things to, like, make it okay to have feelings, and recognize that, sometimes they're getting a charge. It doesn't mean that I'm still saying that what maybe she was doing something wrong. That's okay. It was the level of charge that she was getting, right? So I did. I knew I had this moment where I'm like, "Oh, honey, thank you. That's so sweet." But I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And she's like, "Okay." And she pats the, like, next to her on the bed. She's like, "Tell me about your day." And it was just, oh my God, I get goosebumps, like, remembering it, because it was genuine. It was She wasn't making fun of me.
No,
She was just
no.
honestly kind of like mirroring, like, what we were supposed to try and do here, and offering it. And it was such a gift. I think I wrote that example in my book, if I remember correctly, but, because it was so powerful to me that.
Yeah, and it's a time of real honest connection between the two of you.
Mhm.
Because if you show her what it's like to talk about your feelings and to trust her with them, then she'll do that with you as well.
Yeah.
And I think, trying to fake our emotions through our lives with our kids,
Mhm.
it just really backfires. Women, I think, particularly today, feel so much pressure to have um, two worlds working in concert with
Oof.
one another, but they each require about 60 hours per week. And the stress is just too much. So you talk about maintaining your identity, and part of your identity may be in the work that you do, and
Mhm.
balancing that with motherhood. How do you teach mothers to set boundaries, not just on motherhood, but on their work?
Uh,
Are we good at it?
I would say generally no.
Mhm.
First of all, I wanna commend us, because aren't we amazing? Like, I think mothers and women are so amazing, because we need to do it better, and there's so much we have to learn about how, what we're gonna talk about, setting boundaries and all that. But our capacity is so huge. We can do those 2 jobs, and it kinda hurts and helps us, like,
Mhm.
the fact that we can stretch and we can, give so much, but there is a breaking point,
Mhm.
and whether that ends up in our mental illness, our physical, it's going to eventually show up. But I do wanna honor that we really do have superpower
Yeah.
capacities.
Yes. Yeah.
But we wanna temper that, and really see, and the boundary setting is a big one, right?
Mhm.
And that's at home, and, that can be, because sometimes, what's also wired in our culture, it's starting to shift, and maybe you've seen shifts too, where spouses are, equal partners,
Mhm.
as far as helping, not helping, but like a real partnership where it's everybody's, pitching in full to the care of the home and the children. But there's still a lot of situations that I have found and run up against where, unconsciously even, the partner feels like, "Oh, but you're supposed to take care of me too, right?" Like, wait. So we have that. We have the work,
Yeah.
potentially a partner, our children, whose needs are met. But the one at work, because that's such a strict structure, and I do believe and there's, studies and some things on this, that the US is one of the worst as far as in a developed country supporting mothers, is supporting, the primary caregiver
Mm-hmm.
within a family. So we are up against sometimes some pretty strict boundaries of like what we can and can't do. And I find that just the the process or the experience of valuing ourselves enough to ask, to really go for what we need, structure something that works for us, and, really work with the company, not like, the first time they say no. Um, it's going to take us fighting for what we need to start to change things more systematically and globally. Um, well, I shouldn't say globally because some countries do it better than we do,
Right.
for sure, within our country. To and it's we don't like to have to take that on. We shouldn't have to. It can take courage. It can take, some real grit on our part. But I like to frame that more as that is every time we do that, we're telling ourselves how much we matter. And
Yep.
we're affirming ourselves and that our needs matter, that this, I having it how I want will benefit everybody. I'll be better at work. And then when it's happening at home, and I say better, meaning more available, more, you know, I don't
Right.
want to just make it sound like, oh, great. So then we can do more. Right. But that is, we will be more efficient, effective, and
And
we'll
we'll,
enjoy
and we'll,
ourselves more.
we'll be better at everything. I do think we're making progress. I remember when I was doing my residency, my husband stayed home for 3.5 years while I did my residency training. And then, because we had kids, and then I stayed home while he did his. But I remember when I was working and I was having our second child, and I was working insane hours. And the program gave me 6 weeks off. And this is my second baby. And it came for me to deliver. And I said, no, 6 weeks is not going to cut it. And they said, well, that's all you can have. I said, no, I need at least 3 months. And they said, well, you're not going to have it. And I said, okay, I quit. I
Yeah.
quit because I just knew I had to push back, and I knew what I couldn't do.
Mhm.
And sure enough, a week later, they rehired me because they needed my body there. But, sometimes, but we have made more progress than that.
We
But
have.
sometimes we
We're
really
slow.
have to say, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to work, and trust that, we can make it work out eventually. But I think that women in particular are very hesitant to say no, or this is what I need, or I'm going to set some boundaries. Um, because they don't want to, because they'll get embarrassed. They don't want to look like, that they're a bad worker or something like that. And I think we really need to get past that.
We do. And, as you were saying that, I was sympathizing with, single mothers who, maybe it's easier for someone to say no if they know that they might have a little wiggle room to find a new job because a spouse or partner is helping, fill the gap. That
Yeah.
single mom, another level of trust. But wherever you sit, it's still a leap of faith, right? We're
Yes.
still taking that leap and trusting that something will be there and something that works for me is going to that I'll find it, right? And it exists. And the more of us showing that it exists, the more of us talking about how, oh, I asked for this. It was rejected, but then they came back and gave it to me. The more we share and see examples of it,
Yep.
the more we can then, provide we're mothering others in that way, right? We're we're mothering the mothers.
Yeah.
And that's where us collectively.
Well, and that's why I think, it's back to that tribe, the older mothers helping younger mothers. And
Yeah.
because there are changes, and I do think they're positive ones, and we need to, remind one another that, some really good things are happening. And paternity leave, and maternity leave is wonderful. So you talk about some of the things that we don't say out loud. that what women feel, but they don't want to say. We've sort of touched on this a little bit, but can you give me some specifics about things that women would feel, but they're like, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to hear myself say it because then it becomes true? Or what is your experience with some of the things we're afraid to admit?
Yeah. Thanks. And yeah, I think we've probably kind of woven in, some of them have been said as we've been talking. But the first thing that came to mind as you were asking that question, Meg, was I'm hurting.
Hmm.
I'm struggling. This is hard. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. I feel inadequate. I don't feel enough. The whole, in that whole sphere of, because that just feels so, we don't want to admit that. We don't, what will that mean if I say that? What are the ramifications of of admitting to that? I have failed, or, where do I go from here?
Hmm.
Um, but I think because of everything we said earlier, how we're so wired to that we're not supposed to have those feelings. Like motherhood is just supposed to be this beautiful, blissful, natural, intuitive. Oh, that's another one. I don't know how to do this. Like, I don't know how to do
Right.
it.
Exactly.
Really? I like
Yeah, I can start with the
doing.
basics. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I've had so many young mothers go, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I said, there's no embarrassing questions in here.
Mm-mm.
None at all, because we didn't, nobody gave us a manual.
Oh,
I'll never forget when I had our first baby and I was in medical school, my pediatrician said, well, I don't really need to tell you anything. I'm like, yeah, you do.
you need to tell me
I've never
everything.
raised a baby before. But anyway, we only have a couple minutes, and
Mm.
you talk about, moving from survival mode and self-awareness, and how important self-awareness is as a tool for healing.
Mm.
So what are some of the signs, if you were talking to a mom who's just sitting there listening, maybe she's a single mom, maybe married, working, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What are some of the signs that she can look for that says, I think I'm operating in survival mode?
Mm.
And what is one thing she could do to sort of shift from survival mode into a healthier space?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about that new mom who doesn't even think she has time for a shower, or doesn't know how she's going to get, a shower in. Like, oh, that's a maintenance survival thing. We're making sure I drink enough water. If some of those you're finding really challenging or difficult, then I need to raise my self-awareness, and some of what we talked about, which is either, why am I having a hard time asking for help? Why do I think I shouldn't have these basic needs? So the first thing we would do is then, take that first step to, who's the first person, who do I feel safe with asking for help?
Mm-hmm.
Spouse, is it, saying, I need you to do this one thing that maybe she hasn't asked for before, or I need this time in the morning. Let's figure out our schedule so that you're not leaving as early, so I can get my shower and
Mm-hmm.
coffee or whatever in.
Yeah.
And having a conversation, with your caregivers, or with the people around you, and deciding to be curious and asking. Yeah, I mean, we'll keep it at that one, because we said one, of course.
There's many, many others.
What sneak in there is like, say what you're feeling, right? Anytime you're like having that, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling hopeless.
And don't apologize for it.
Don't apologize and say, I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm afraid,
Mhm.
or I'm angry that my spouse gets to just get up and go to work and I'm here doing this thing I don't know how to do.
Right.
Right? There's a big first step is just naming to yourself what the emotion is.
And it's okay.
And it's okay.
My guest has been Dr. Gertrude Lyons. She's the author of Rewrite the Mother Code. She's host of the Rewrite the Mother Code podcast. So take a listen to that. She's done a lot more. But Gertrude, this has just been so much fun having you on. And I really encourage everybody to take a peek at your book, Rewrite the Mother Code from Sacrifice to Stardust. It's just terrific. Thanks so much for joining me today.
It's been just a pleasure and blessing, Meg. Thank you. Thank you.
Many professionals invest in an executive coach for personal development and a trainer for physical fitness. Now you can hire me, a best-selling author and expert coach, to help you raise great kids. I've over 35 years practicing pediatrics and an extensive experience decoding what your kids need and think about you. I've helped countless parents just like you. You can talk directly with me through private or group coaching. I'll listen and provide a customized plan to help you be the best dad you can be. Sign up now through the link in the episode notes. Your kids are counting on you. Let's make your family's future brighter together.